What's the most backward counseling statement you've ever received? I was a specialist working supply at Fort Carson. My job was basic inventory management. Count stuff, order stuff, track stuff. Nothing exciting. We had this new lieutenant, Donovan Pierce, fresh out of West Point. Guy wanted everything by the book. Every regulation followed to the letter. My supervisor was Staff Sergeant Garrett Holbrook. 20 years in, 6 months from retirement. Holbrook ran supply the old school way. If it worked, don't question it. The two of them clashed constantly. Pierce wanted digital tracking systems and proper documentation. Holbrook wanted to keep doing things the way he'd done them since 2003. One Tuesday morning, Private Wade Richmond came to our office. Kid looked terrified. Said his squad was deploying to Afghanistan in 72 hours and half their cold weather gear hadn't arrived. Holbrook checked the system. The order was stuck in some bureaucratic limbo at depot level. Wouldn't arrive for another 3 weeks. Way too late. Sorry, kid. Nothing I can do, Holbrook said. Take it up with your chain of command. Wade left, looking defeated. I could see the panic in his eyes. These guys were heading to mountain operations in November. Without proper cold weather gear, people could die from exposure. I waited until Holbrook went to lunch. Then I called my buddy Curtis at another base. He had surplus cold weather gear sitting in storage. Made an unofficial trade. They needed body armor panels we had excess of. We needed their cold weather stuff. No paperwork, no official channels. Just two supply guys helping each other out. Had everything loaded on a truck that afternoon. Personally delivered it to Wade's unit. His sergeant major almost hugged me. Said I'd saved their entire deployment from being a disaster. Felt good. Did the right thing. Helped soldiers who needed it. Next morning, Lieutenant Pierce called me into his office. He had this formal counseling statement printed out. My stomach dropped. Specialist Brennan, I'm counseling you for unauthorized equipment transfer, failure to follow proper supply chain protocols, and conducting official business without supervisory approval. I just stared at him. Sir, those soldiers needed that gear for deployment. The official channels were going to take 3 weeks. That's not the point. You circumvented established procedures, created an undocumented transaction, traded government property without authorization. He slid the counseling statement across his desk. I read it in disbelief. The opening paragraph praised my initiative and problem-solving skills, called me a valuable asset to the unit. Then the next 3 paragraphs destroyed me for actually using those skills, listed every regulation I'd violated, every protocol I'd bypassed. The conclusion recommended I be counseled on proper procedures and monitored for future compliance issues. Sir, with all due respect, this makes no sense. You're saying I did good work, but I'm getting in trouble for it? Pierce leaned back in his chair. You did the right thing the wrong way. In the military, process matters as much as results. So those soldiers should have deployed without cold weather gear because the process was broken? No, you should have elevated the issue through proper channels. Let command handle it. There wasn't time for that, sir. Then that's a command failure, not a supply failure. Not your problem to solve. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Getting formally counseled for preventing soldiers from freezing to death in Afghanistan. Holbrook heard about it within an hour. Came storming into Pierce's office while I was still there. Lieutenant, what the hell is this? You're counseling my specialist for doing his job? He violated procedure, Sergeant. Clear-cut case. He saved an entire platoon from a nightmare deployment. That's what matters. Pierce stood his ground. Regulations exist for a reason. We can't just ignore them when they're inconvenient. The argument escalated. Holbrook threatened to take it to the battalion commander. Pierce threatened to add insubordination to my counseling statement. Finally, Holbrook turned to me. Sign the statement. Write in the rebuttal section exactly what you did and why. Let this be part of your record. I signed it. Wrote 3 paragraphs explaining the situation. How official channels had failed. How soldiers' lives were at stake. How I'd made a judgment call. 2 weeks later, Wade's unit called from Afghanistan. Sent a formal thank you through official channels. Mentioned by name how my quick thinking had prevented cold weather injuries during their first mountain operation. That letter went straight into my personnel file, right next to Pierce's counseling statement. Battalion commander saw both documents during my next evaluation. Called me into his office. Expected another lecture about regulations. Instead, he promoted me to sergeant ahead of schedule. Lieutenant Pierce was technically correct about procedure, he told me. But you were absolutely correct about priority. Soldiers first, paperwork second. Holbrook retired 3 months later. At his ceremony, he pulled me aside. That counseling statement was the stupidest thing I've seen in 20 years. But your rebuttal and that thank you letter, career highlight material, you did good, kid. Pierce eventually got transferred to a desk job at battalion. Heard he's still writing backward counseling statements for people who actually do their jobs well. That document's still in my file 15 years later. My most backward counseling statement and my proudest moment in supply. All on the same piece of paper.